I had a buddy of mine. He and I became, really good friends. He was a heroin addict, 6'6", had a scholarship to one of the major universities to play basketball. He was also a twin. And he started snorting. No, he started shooting. He was doing heroin. And, oh, man, you look at his veins were like shot.
Yeah, tracks on them.
Yeah. So he ended up owing some money. And by the way, this was back in my Detroit days. Crazy days, man. Those were crazy days. They ended up killing his brother, his twin brother, mistaking his brother for him.
Wow.
So he had to live with that. His brother wasn't on drugs or anything. But he would try to go for jobs. He couldn't. He always had to wear a long sleeve shirt. And he would call me up in the middle of the night. I got the shakes. I got the shakes. I got the shakes. And I would just talk to him. We would just talk. And then he would calm down. He ended up changing his life over a period of time, changing his life.
It's good.
But let me ask you this. So I'm getting the impression that if he was able to change his life from being a heroin addict to not doing drugs at all, that heroin's not as addictive as crack. What's the difference between the two?
I think crack is more addictive than heroin. I'm not saying heroin isn't an addictive drug, because it is. It's very addictive. And heroin could be deadly. You could always OD with it. It was very difficult to OD on crack, because it's pure cocaine with all the additives out of it. So you're smoking crack, whereas with heroin, you're injecting it. You would get a hot load of heroin and inject it. If it's really bad and your body couldn't handle it, you'd OD. And there was a lot of cats that were ODing on heroin or bad heroin or heroin laced with something else. So that's the difference between crack and heroin. You can OD on heroin. Crack, pretty much not so.
Okay, so take me now so now you're in the hood. You're running into all kinds of experiences with crack. You're undercover. You passed the test. And when I say pass the test, this test, because you got another one coming and another one coming. Did you ever run into any of the guys that you ended up sending to prison?
I did. The one that stands out the most, and there was a few that I ran into, but the one that I remember the most was I'd been retired. And I was on a cruise, and I was over in the Caribbean, and I had a port stop with my ex-wife, and we got off at Antigua. And she wanted to go see the island. And Antigua was a very, very small island. It wasn't as commercialized as the rest of the Caribbean. And I said, well, let's go out. We'll go get I want some sunglasses. And we're walking off the ship into the town. And I said to myself, I know this guy, and I'm over in Antigua. And I said, I know this guy, and I'm looking at him. She said, where do you know him from? I said, I locked him up. She said, really? I'm like, yeah, I locked him up back in 1991, 92. And she's like, oh, we got to get out of here. Let's get back on the boat. I'm like, no, I'm going to go holler at him. She says, are you crazy? These are his people. And the more I'm looking at him, he never seen me. But I'm looking at him, I'm like, he's a little heavier, but that's him. I know it's him because I developed a real strong rapport with this guy before I locked him up. So she convinced me to get back on the boat. And, we finished the cruise and came back to the States. And when I got back, I called my ex-partner up. I said, listen, I want you to run this guy. Do you remember this guy? He said, yeah. He said, run him. I said, because I swore I seen him over in Antigua. And he gets back to me a few hours later. He says, Rod, he says, the guy was just deported. He just got out of jail and they deported him like 3 days ago. So I'm like, wow. So that was the guy that I ran into that had the most significant meaning to me because, although he was a known big drug dealer, and I think he got sentenced to like 16, 18 years for selling crack. He was the one that stood out the most because we used to hang out. That's how deep I was into him. We hung out, went out to dinner, went out to clubs, but he wasn't a bad dude. He just got caught up in the wrong life. And he was an islander. I thought he was Jamaican, but I don't know whether his nationality was, but they sent him back to Antigua.
So how big a drug dealer was he?
He ran the organization. He was the leader of this organization in Germantown. And we worked his organization for maybe 2 or 3 months. And we locked everybody up. And I remember sitting him down because we took his case federally. And I told him, I said, look, man, you sold me 2 or 3 ounces of crack cocaine, and each one of those deliveries is a 10-year mandatory minimum. So you're looking at 20 or 30 years, man. And I said, look, I'm going to give you an opportunity to help yourself by telling me where you got your drugs from. That's what we call, trying to flip him. And he looked me dead in my face and told me, I'm not a snitch. When I locked him up at his house, he had 2 little boys. They had to be about 4, 6, somewhere around there, and his girlfriend or wife, whoever she was. And I said, man, when you get out, your kids are going to be grown. I said, all you have to do is tell me where you got your supply from. We'll work a case on them, and it will help you. And he looked me again in my eyes and said, I am not a snitch. And we took that case federal, and he got convicted, and they shipped him out in probably, I think it was 1992. And he did from 92 to about 2004, 2005. So he did a lot of time. But he was true to his word because he didn't snitch on anybody.
So do you think he went back into drugs?
When he got back over there?
When he got out? Yeah.
I don't think he did.
Okay.
I mean, it's not that kind of demand over in the islands like it is in the States. Mm-hmm. And for him to be in Antigua, which is a very poor place, it was poor to me. For him to be hanging around, doing nothing, no, because he was living a very good life.
Okay. Would you say that was the biggest operation that you busted?
That wasn't the biggest operation, but you asked me about somebody that I had encountered after locking them up.
Right.
But no, there was a lot of big deals that we took federal, where we were doing organizations, Dominican, stuff like that, where we were buying actually kilos of cocaine. So this by then I had again into a larger role where I was buying weight. It was no problem to get 2 or 3 kilos of cocaine, and the feds were giving me money. We're paying like $15,000, $20,000 a kilo. Sometimes we'll let the money walk, meaning we'll give it to them. You take it and I'll take the cocaine. And if you think you got away with it, then, well, this guy just gave me $12,000 and he didn't get locked up. He's not a cop. So the next time we make a purchase, we're going to up it up a little bit and try to identify more people in that organization. So there were some big drug busts, very big.
Did you run into a lot of guys that thought they were running the neighborhood, thought they were the heavyweights or acted like they were the heavyweights? And in your opinion, it's like, bro, that's not heavyweight.
Yeah, it was the guys that were selling the crack cocaine. I mean, they might have strong-armed the neighborhood, that a block or something, and there were a lot of kids and older people on the block, and you had them people terrified. And somebody would make an anonymous call and say to us, look, they're selling drugs at this particular location. And, being a supervisor, I said, okay, we're going to open up an investigation. We'll send some guys in and make some buys. We'll send some people in there, identify some people, and try to get all of them. So we were taking small people off the blocks, giving life to these blocks that have been taken over by these petty drug dealers, because basically they were selling crack cocaine. There was no weight in it. No, they're not making no real money, but they still commanded that area, that block, that neighborhood. It had the older people and the kids in fear and in danger. Mm-hmm. So that gave me some sense of pride knowing that I kind of freed this block up. They don't have to live in fear anymore because now we clean that up. If we get them off the street, try to get them in jail for 4 or 5 years, they don't have to worry about that anymore. So that gave some satisfaction.
You've been listening to Tell the Story, but stay tuned because there's so much more to come. That's coming up next.